They say every machine has a soul, a ghost in the metal. If that's true, then on April 27th, 2009, we witnessed a murder.
General Motors is announcing major package today, including...
This wasn't a quiet death in a peaceful sleep. This was a public execution carried out by the very hands that gave it life. General Motors, in a desperate plea to the government, offered up a sacrifice, and that sacrifice was Pontiac. But before the silence, there was a roar, a defiant, thunderous roar that shook the streets and rattled the cages of the establishment. Pontiac wasn't just a car company. It was a rebellion on four wheels. For those of us with gasoline in our veins, it was the heartbeat of American performance. So the question that haunts us, the one that keeps us up at night is, how did they let it die? To understand the soul of Pontiac, you have to go back to a time when America was flexing its muscles. The 60s. We were a nation high on horsepower and possibility. But inside the hallowed halls of General Motors, the corporate suits had put a leash on performance, a ban on racing. They wanted to sell sensible, practical transportation. They forgot that people don't just want to get from A to B. They want to feel something along the way. And one maverick engineer named John DeLorean, he understood that. DeLorean wasn't a suit. He was a car guy through and through. He saw the fire in the belly of the youth market and knew that GM's beige-colored future was a dead end. He and his secret skunkworks team of gearheads, guys like Bill Collins and Russ G., they knew the rules. And they knew just how to break them. The weapon of their rebellion. It was beautiful. They took a run-of-the-mill Pontiac Tempest, a perfectly respectable, boring car, and committed an act of beautiful, glorious sacrilege. They found a loophole in the corporate red tape and shoehorned a massive 389 cubic inch V8 from a full-sized Bonneville into it. They called it the GTO. And it wasn't just a car. It was the shot heard round the automotive world. It was the birth of the muscle car. The GTO wasn't just a car, it was a statement. It was a middle finger to the establishment. And America fell in love. Sales exploded. Pontiac, once the sleepy, middle-of-the-road brand, was suddenly the cool kid. The performance division of General Motors. They weren't just building cars, they were building excitement. Just like the ad said, and at the heart of it all was DeLorean, the rebel with a cause, who proved that a little bit of rule-breaking could go a long, long way. But the fire that burns brightest, burns quickest. As the 60s gave way to the 70s and 80s, the world changed. Gas crises, new regulations. The muscle car era was on life support, but something else was happening within. GM, a cancer, was growing. The bean counters, the marketing committees, the corporate suits DeLorean had fought so hard against, they were winning. The soul of Pontiac was being suffocated by something called badge engineering, a fancy term for laziness. It meant taking a boring Chevrolet, slapping a Pontiac grill on it and calling it a day. The brand that was built on rebellion was now a hollowed-out shell, a ghost of its former self. And then came the final, unforgivable sin, the ultimate betrayal, the Pontiac Aztek. It was supposed to be revolutionary, a genre-bending lifestyle vehicle. But it was a monster, designed by a committee, compromised by cost-cutting, and forced onto a minivan chassis. It was everything Pontiac wasn't. It was ugly, it was lazy, and it was a symbol of just how lost GM had become. The Aztek didn't just fail in the marketplace. It failed the very spirit of Pontiac. They had taken a brand that stood for power, for passion, for a roaring V8 and a cloud of tire smoke, and they had turned it into a plastic-cladded minivan. The rebellion was over. The suits had won, and the soul of Pontiac was left to bleed out on the cold, sterile floor of a corporate boardroom.
So why does it matter? Why shed a tear for a dead car company? Because it was never just about the cars, it was about the idea. The idea that you didn't have to be a millionaire to own a piece of the American dream. The idea that a family car could have the heart of a tiger. Pontiac was an underdog, a rule breaker, and it reminded us that even a giant corporation could, for a brief shining moment, have a soul.
That soul lives on, not in the hushed halls of GM, but in the garages and at the car shows. It lives in the rumble of a 455, in the glint of a chrome bumper, in the hearts of the men and women who keep these legends alive. They are the keepers of the faith, the mechanics of revival. But is the story over? In the last year, whispers have turned into rumbles. GM has quietly renewed the trademarks for the Pontiac name and the iconic arrowhead logo. Rumors are swirling about a possible return. Maybe not as a full brand, but as a specialized, performance-oriented model. A new GTO perhaps, or a modern Firebird to challenge the Mustangs and Challengers of the world. Could it be? Could GM have finally realized what they lost? Or is this just a cynical marketing ploy? A ghost summoned to sell a few more cars? The truth is, we don't know. But for those of us who remember the roar, who still have a little gasoline in our veins, we'll be waiting and listening for the thunder.